Oh,
Thank you. I'm Richard Lawler, and you are watching the Engadget HD podcast. I'm here with a few very special friends. First, Michael Gorman.
I'm very special. I'm
this
senior
is
editor
actually
at
the
Engadget.
only special friend.
That's right. I'm
me.
special.
Well,
right? With air quotes?
Air quote. You threw in the air quotes. I wasn't gonna go there.
I was leaving it open to interpretation.
There it is.
And a few old friends.
That's respectful. Yeah, you know.
Darren Murph, Tim Stevens, thank you for joining
We're
us.
still here.
Absolutely, and I am in fact older than the last time I was on the stage. So,
Older.
You're all grown
I
up
also
now?
want to give a
Like
shout
5
out
minutes?
to Ben Draba out there.
Ben
Draba. We loved that CES game last
oh
night.
man, Florida State.
One love, Ben.
ACC, man. ACC.
Yeah, it's been he's had a good week.
He has had a great week.
So
Yes.
let's talk TVs at CES.
Yep.
I think you've probably seen the most out of anyone on this stage. What's the most impressive thing that you've seen so far?
So from a hardware perspective, the LG bendable OLED 77-inch TV is just silly in person.
Is that 4K?
Better
or
than the
It's
Samsung?
4K. But I'm a sucker for OLED. Like it's those hyper saturated colors always get
Oh,
me.
yeah.
It's so thin, like
Yeah.
it's absurdly thin.
You got to know what you prefer. So
Right.
when
Yeah.
it actually goes from flat to curved, I mean, is it amazing? Is it something that you're looking at and you're like, oh, it's got segments, I know it's going to happen, and then boom, or it just comes out of nowhere?
So, I mean, it's pretty slow. I think they said
It's
it
very
takes like
slow.
13 seconds
Yeah.
to go from flat all the
like
way
that.
Which is
to
roughly the
curved.
same time as the drop top on the 2015 Mustang
Oh,
convertible.
there it is. That
Right
thing
behind
is
us here.
nice.
Hey yo, shout out
There
to
it
Ford.
is.
The door is an OLED.
Is there any
That's right.
security watching that car right now? It's kind
Yeah.
of late.
Moving right along.
Yeah.
Moving right along.
There's going to be some Engadget
I'm
editors
arranging the
watching it later
paperwork
on.
swap right now.
Yeah. Have you guys hit the floor and seen anything?
Yeah,
home theater?
so I saw the Samsung proxy to that TV, which I think is
Yeah.
also 77 inches, isn't it? So is
No,
it
it's
the same
it's
one?
85, I thought.
It's funny how they often have
It's funny,
very,
isn't
very.
it?
They shop at the
similar
same panel
Yeah.
manufacturers.
But, I mean,
I'm just saying.
I mean, so the idea is, you create this sweet spot, right? Where,
Right.
it's the ultimate image. But of course, if you're just to the side, then it's not as good. I don't see people spending is this viable long term, do you think, Richard? Or is this kind of like a talking point for 2015 or whatever? Or
I haven't
2014?
seen anyone yet who's been properly impressed by
Okay,
the curved
good.
screens.
So I'm not alone.
And I've seen it. I've seen the off angle. It does look good from the sides.
Yeah.
It looks, I think, better than most flat TVs.
Mm-hmm.
But is that something that you can actually sell people, especially at these prices?
Yeah.
I don't know what's on their mind.
Do we have any prices on the flexible ones?
No, of course.
Well, I
not.
mean, tens or hundreds of thousands of dollars, right?
But we're probably talking upwards of $20,000, $30,000
Yeah.
on these.
But with the TVs, let's be real. It's never about the first year they come out. It's about if they can make that technology viable at a mainstream price in 3 years when it's the norm. I mean, 1080p used to be the exception. There was like 4 sets that had it.
And that's very true. The first 1080p, the first HD TVs that were shown at shows like this
Yeah.
more than a decade ago had those $30,000 price tags, and now
Right.
we all have one in our house.
Right.
But still, I don't know if curved is going to make it.
I don't
Well,
Even
think
though
so.
these new ones are at least wall mountable. The ones last year
Yeah.
you couldn't wall mount.
I'm skeptical that the movable ones. I mean, that's just it's more that can go wrong with the TV, and that's gonna be so much more expensive than just having a flat.
I don't like. This might be weird, but I don't like the thought of you're talking about wall mountable. Unless you live in like a gently curved house. I don't
What,
like.
you don't?
I don't like that.
A new era of architecture that curves around your TV.
Yes.
This curves around you.
Unless you sell me the
It's
house.
the new feng shui.
Put it in the corner.
Yeah.
Okay, I like that.
That's actually
You changed my mind completely and immediately.
Come around
Yeah.
on these.
I gotta say, like, just the standard curve, like, they look good. I would be a fan. If all else being equal, I'm buying a curved TV. But the problem is, it's never going to be all else being equal, and that's.
Yeah.
I don't know if it's going to be
There's
worth
going
the
to be
premium.
cost. There's going to
Yeah.
be cost, especially for the actual bending ones. I
Right.
mean, you've got a motor. You've got some redundancy testing there. A lot of testing
You
there.
got to pay off all that R&D you paid to figure out how to bend a TV screen.
You've got to learn.
I don't know where they're
geometry.
going with those. At least with the bendable phones, you can talk about extra durability,
Yeah.
solving problems that people have actually asked about. No one before this show or last year was thinking, you know what, this TV's just too flat.
Yeah.
What can we do about that?
Right.
We got to do something about this flat thing.
Well, and I feel like because they always say that it gives you a more optimum viewing angle. It shows, like I think I heard you mentioning before, Tim. It hits the pixels square on. But I don't think that really makes a huge difference until you get just the massively incredible size. Like on those 105-inch curved,
Right.
that you notice it a lot
you
more.
know, yeah.
But on like most people, 50, 60-inch TVs, I'm not really sure that that's a big enough screen where
The
it's going
solution
to
to
make
that
that
is just
much
to
of a
get us all
difference.
105-inch TVs.
That's
Yeah.
right.
That's true.
I'm sorry to say I have to. I'm glad that I could do these 5 minutes with you, but I got to run. So
All right.
Thank you.
Oh.
Thank you for
Tim
stopping by.
Stevens, thank you. Always a pleasure.
I love you all.
Always a gentleman.
Yes.
Always a gentleman. So I have 5 more minutes. Can we talk about user
You got 5?
interfaces? Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah,
Let's
let's
talk
get it-
about
let's
user
get it
interface. We
cranking.
were just talking about that when we were walking up here.
Yes.
You've seen the new LG WebOS interface.
Yes. So it's, for folks who don't know WebOS, you might think of it as a mobile operating system. You saw it on phones and tablets from HP most recently. Now, basically, LG bought that, and they've got it on their newest line of TVs. I think they said they're going to have them on 70% of their smart TVs that come out in 2014.
And it's the best?
And yeah. Starting off, it's the best UI I've ever used on a smart TV. It's the first one that's not actively like kind of irritating me.
So
as I'm
part of
using
me is super amped about that, and the other part is super sad that there will never be a phone or tablet that could join the ecosystem seamlessly. Do you know what I'm saying? If you could throw iOS on a TV, in theory, at least it could
Right.
work with the phones. If you could some form of Android, like, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah,
it creates
yeah.
an ecosystem.
Yeah.
But by nature, this WebOS TV will always be siloed unless what? They
Well, they're
open
tying
up.
it a bit to their efforts to make HTML5 apps that are cross-platform,
Right.
so that you can at least on the televisions anyway. I don't know if it's going to be the same as the mobile devices and elsewhere. You can have the same apps everywhere, and maybe you can have more compatibility with whatever devices you want to bring to the table.
Right.
Okay, fair enough.
So just before you leave, Derek, so the real thing, the best part about the WebOS UI is it's just basically a straight rail of apps and options that pop up overlaid on top of the video that you're playing. So if you've got video, you can kind of see it grayed out in the background, and you just get the menu. So they always talk about it like they don't want to give you that jarring experience. It's why they ditched the card UI.
Right.
So that way
right.
you can hop from, like on the main screen, they've got their curated apps that they pop up along with a recommendation engine. Off to the left side, you navigate one pane over, and it gives you all like a history of every source you've watched. And then you go to the right, and it's got the rest of your applications. And you can arrange things as you want. You can move the apps around in the order that you want, and everything switches smoothly, seamlessly. They treat everything the same.
So here's my final question. Here's my departure question.
Yep.
As amazing as that is, and it actually is pretty good,
It is.
and as desperate as companies like this are to differentiate their Android phones or their Windows computers, what if they throw this on top of Windows? What if they're like, you know what? Let's just mix it up. Throw it on top of... Is there any way...
WebOS on top
No,
of
I
Windows?
mean, like,
What?
with elements of it. Elements of that design. It's probably the best design they've come out with on the software front in recent memory.
Yeah.
Definitely. That's. I mean, I'm not saying.
If you
I'm not
threw
sure
that on
that's
a Windows
terribly high
machine,
bar,
it would,
but
to me, it would... Oh, it's more attractive than it used to be.
yeah.
What
I
if
mean,
they did?
it's.
I want that to happen, is all
Yeah.
I'm saying.
They call it a launcher, and they've talked about taking it to other devices.
Thank
We'll
you.
see
Yeah.
what happens.
A launcher.
It could serve that purpose. Yeah, I'll buy that.
WebOS launcher on Windows.
Why not?
Let's make it happen.
WebOS lives. If you know how I felt about my pre, you know how good
That's
I
right.
feel about that.
That's right. So that's my departing words. I want a WebOS launcher for Windows.
All right,
When it
work
happens,
on
call me.
We'll do.
LG,
we'll let
call
you know.
me. All right. It's been a pleasure, gentlemen.
All right, brother.
Thanks for joining the HD podcast again, Darren Murph. So you saw the WebOS
Yep.
on TVs. They had it running. It was all very smooth.
Mm-hmm.
We've seen also the other smart TVs. Samsung is advertising how quickly their TVs start.
Yes.
I know you went and checked them out. Did you see anything about their smart TVs?
So I didn't actually get to see the boot up. It happened as quickly as they say. I think they say it's like just a matter of seconds. I mean, certainly the way like moving through apps and like going through things, they're both very quick because both of them have bumped up like the hardware inside. They're kind of leveraging they're finally kind of tapping their mobile talents and those kind of engineering things to put it in a TV, 4 years after they should have. But better late than never, right?
Yeah, you don't have a tiny cell phone battery. You have an always-on power source. You're connected to the main power.
Right.
You have tons of space, so you don't have to worry about heat. And so far, they've trailed for some reason the basic performance of a tablet.
Yeah. So really the main thing that you see is just the launching of apps and switching between, sources, whether it's online, web content, live TV, you're a Blu-ray player, any of those kinds of things, like swapping between them is super fast on both. I can't really say either one was better than the other. Both are just infinitely better than what we've seen on most TVs previously.
Was there anything special about the display quality that you saw either at LG or at Samsung? I know you said you like the OLED. They both have plenty of OLED.
Yes.
They both have lots of Ultra HD.
Right.
I went stopped by Samsung's booth today. I saw their 8K.
Yeah, that one is silly. I remember there was an 8K last year from Panasonic.
They've had it for the last couple of years from Sharp.
Oh, Sharp.
That's what I'm thinking. So this is the second one that I've seen. I didn't like their demo material. They were showing different floors of a mall.
Yeah,
And
which I thought was an odd choice.
I was pretty much done watching that as soon as I started watching it.
Yeah. The other ones but as far as the image quality, OLED's at the top of the heap for me. Honestly, there's not a tremendous amount of difference when just the resolution's so high. With the UHD on both ends, they both look really, really good. I mean, I couldn't really articulate a difference.
I think in demos when you have more action, because I've seen the 8K with stuff from the Olympics, and it looked amazing because I knew what I was going to see, and I was really looking that closely at every part of it.
Yeah.
But for static scenes like that, and just the eye-popping, as you mentioned, the colors, the oversaturation, and OLED catches your eye right out of the gate.
It does.
Maybe this is the year that their prices will be reasonable enough that people can consider buying them. I mean, a $9,000 TV isn't really appealing to most.
Yeah, I mean, I hope they will. I mean, Samsung, they didn't even roll out anything new OLED, so I don't know what they're doing. It seems to be much bigger focus at LG, and they're making smaller sizes. I know they said that their 70-inch, I think it's 77-inch OLED, just standard curve, not the movable one. That's supposed to come out, I think they said in the next 6 months.
And they've been cranking up production. That was something that they announced prior to the show. They're opening up plants around the world. They've got a new one in Mexico that's supposed to be coming online, so that should help the prices come down.
Yeah. And I definitely want to see more of the OLED. Like, I was real disappointed that Samsung didn't bring that out. I mean, after what they showed at last year's CES, that 55-inch that was just like straight showstopper.
It seemed like it was ready to go, and then all of a sudden it wasn't.
Yeah.
Now, we've seen a ton of Quad HD. Are you impressed with Quad HD? Have you seen a difference that would make you tell someone else to consider buying one?
I mean, it's hard for me to say that when I don't know what the prices are on a lot of them. It's certainly nice. I'm not, no. I guess short answer, no. I haven't seen anything that makes me think like
if it's not blowing you away and it's not making that difference,
right?
Then that's really all there is to it. And I think that's the problem that they have right now.
Yeah.
And we've heard a bit about content. Netflix mentioned 4K. Samsung announced a ton of services that it's working with to get content that's in 4K.
Yep.
But until that actually arrives, you're talking about 1080p content and being upscaled. I've had a chance to watch it quite a bit on a Sony. Watching a Blu-ray on a 4K TV looks really good.
Yeah.
And I think that if they get the prices appropriate this year, high-end buyers are going to opt for Ultra HD TVs.
Right. And I think that Sony, that's where Sony has a real advantage, is they've had so much experience dealing with 4K because they're the only ones that do end-to-end production. Like, they build everything from the cameras, they're making the movies and the TV shows.
Owning your own studio doesn't hurt.
That helps. And they're using it to try to leverage, like, they are encouraging, I think is the word that I've heard, everyone to shoot, that uses their studios. Basically everything's getting shot in 4K now. So you're going to see a lot more coming out. And when you've got delivery channels like Netflix, mainstream delivery channels, I know Sony's got their own stuff, which helps. But Netflix is really, that could be a driving force for 4K, I think. What do you think?
That's something that people like to hear when you're sitting there at the store looking at it and the salesman says, you can watch House of Cards in 4K.
Yep.
And here it is, we can show it to you. And when I went over and checked it out at Netflix, they told me that at first this is really just going to be on the embedded Netflix players and the TVs because so many other devices either can't handle it at all or will need to be upgraded. I assume that the game consoles could do the decoding of the new codecs that they're using. Yeah. But at least right now they're not ready for it.
I know. I was actually so I got to speak with Sony about that and was asking. It was I forget his title, Michael Aragon, at Sony, and I was I wanted to know about why isn't 4K on the PS4? You used PlayStation 3 kind of to drive Blu-ray adoption. Why wasn't this happening for 4K? It seems like a logical thing, especially when you have the blueprint, it worked, and it didn't happen. I mean, do you have any idea? Let's speculate a little bit here. I cannot figure out why they wouldn't have built that into the PlayStation 4 from the jump.
I think there are a few things going on. With the HDMI port, you've got we've got several parts that are coming in. You have the HDMI 2.0. The spec was only getting finished last year. They were getting the PS4 design finished last year. I don't know if it can be upgraded via software. They did that with the PS3. They added features later on.
Yeah.
They've done that with some of their TVs. There are several differences in what the TV supports. Some of them support some features, some other features they don't. There's also the security aspect of it, HDCP, which actually manages the DRM in the HDMI port.
Right.
They have to support the latest version, 2.2, to get the 4K content. I don't know if they could or if they still need to work on the software. There's so many things on these new boxes that doesn't work. They still don't have Blu-ray 3D. I know not a lot of people watch those, but I do. I'm so sad that there's no Blu-ray 3D on my Xbox One or PS4.
Nobody's watching 3D anymore, Richard.
It's me.
Let it go.
Look, me
Let
and the
it
three
go.
other people that do are very, very upset that they did not include the feature. But you know, hopefully we'll see 4K through the PS4, and
Yeah.
I won't have to buy yet another system.
Well, like you said, as long as the up-converting is good, that certainly eases the pain tremendously, especially since they can remaster all those movies, since everything, you know, since movies are shot 35 mil, when you transfer that into digital, it's
And
4K.
they've had success with their mastering 4K Blu-rays, and I think Panasonic announced something similar that they're doing with movies to bring the original quality of the mastering out there.
Yep.
Now, as I mentioned, Netflix, I got to see the 4K streaming.
Yep.
I got to experience it. It looked really good. I saw the trailer, the new trailer that they just posted for House of Cards, and I'm so excited for the new season.
Yes, me too. That's what, in a month?
Yeah, Valentine's Day.
Yeah.
Cancel any other plans.
Yes, that's right. We're not going out to dinner. We are staying inside and watching 12 straight episodes of House of Cards.
Yes, it's happening.
Yeah.
It looked sharp. The blacks looked black. I'd need to watch more to really have a good assessment. I saw some documentary content, but it looked good. I think HEVC, which is the new codec that handles these super high resolutions, even at 11 megabits per second and 15 megabits per second, which are the two profiles that they were using, it looked amazing. It looked better than any Netflix I've ever seen, possibly better than Blu-ray.
Any difference? I mean, is there any perceptible differences between, you know, running 4K loops that we see, you know, the 4K content that you've seen elsewhere and what you're seeing on Netflix?
It's so hard to tell because it's not the same kind of content, and
Yeah.
the demo content that you see is cranked up. It's meant for you to see it a particular way.
It's like slow pans of
But
landscapes.
it looked super sharp.
Yeah.
And I'm definitely excited to see that come out. You know, I talked to Netflix about some of the things they were doing. They're still not doing offline viewing, which I found.
I feel like that's got to be a
disappointing.
licensing concern, right? Like maybe the content providers are worried about.
When I spoke to their spokesman, Yoris Evers, he said one of the things they're concerned about is the confusion on the user end, because now you've got several different things. And Netflix, for better or worse, many of the things they do with their UI, it's set up a particular way. You know, it shows you the options for the movies.
Right.
It has the cues. You can't just go in and browse everything they have. It's not what they do.
Right. So, well, so I have a quick question. Have you talked at all with Netflix? I mean, I know you said the codec reduces the bandwidth. Can you talk anything about what that kind of effect is going to have on like your standard Wi-Fi connection? Like how people, is this going to be a problem? Like if you've got everybody in your apartment complex watching 4K, like that's not going to work, is it?
There's some things that can help. They've got their Open Connect program to help with your ISP. Whether or not you have enough bandwidth in your neighborhood, we'll see.
It's a whole other question.
I think we've seen lately a lot of people are complaining suddenly that they can't get 1080p.
Yep.
Netflix has over 30 million customers now. We're going to find out where that breaking point is for over-the-top TV. Speaking of over-the-top TV, Sony.
Yeah.
They announced that they are going to do an over-the-top TV service, IPTV, with both live programming and video on demand. They're going to push it to their devices. They're going to push it to other screens. They didn't reveal a lot of details. They didn't say what content. They didn't say who. IBM said that they were, or I'm sorry, Intel said they were going to do this, and they gave up.
Right.
Because they couldn't get content licenses.
Sony clearly has no licensing problems.
Well, they
At
don't
least
have
with
content.
their own stuff.
They don't have content problems for the stuff that they own, and they brought Vince Gilligan on during their press conference, for example. But I don't think his show is going to be on their IPTV service right away. I'm pretty sure it's licensed to AMC already.
Yeah. I don't understand. It seems like an odd time to be doing this. Do you understand why they are even jumping into IPTV right now?
Well, they've been trying to do it for years. There have
Yeah.
been rumors about it, and last year one of their executives, it might have been Michael Aragon, mentioned that the reason they weren't doing it was what we were just talking about, lack of bandwidth.
Yeah.
And when you're talking about people being able to watch live TV, they're going to suck up a lot of bandwidth constantly, just going and going and going. How do you support this? When
And
people have
additionally-
bandwidth caps, when people
Right.
can't stream high enough bit rates.
Yeah, I mean, there's a reason that cable is still around. Like, people have become accustomed to pretty much bulletproof signal, especially if you're Like, you know, you get a little artifact and compression, but I mean, largely...
People complain about their TV not working, but most of the time when you turn it
Yeah.
on and you go to the channel, it's on.
Yeah.
The internet still isn't there, especially
Yes.
for streaming like that.
I know. Which I'll be curious to see if it actually works out. If we're going to be talking about Sony's IPTV next year.
And if you're talking about one of the things, Kaz, I think I've seen that he mentioned they aren't trying to compete with cable, is what he said. But how can you not? It's like cable.
Yeah.
And certainly they'll have to take small steps at the beginning. But how are you going to get someone to subscribe to this service when you don't have any sports probably to begin with? These are the questions that are going to go for the next year.
Yeah. So there was one more thing that I wanted to touch on with just the TVs, with the Sony set. So, you know, they rolled out a whole new suite of 4K TVs as well with a new wedge-shaped design. And you've got the old Sony, right, with the magnetic fluid speakers chilling at your house. Have you seen their super giant 85-inch? I think it's 85. Yeah.
I have not. I stopped by their booth only for a moment, and I saw their new projector demo, which is insane.
Yes.
But no, I have not.
Which I want to talk about that next.
Yes.
The projector. But the TV, I highly recommend checking it out. Is the thing that was actually very impressive to me on this new, and their top of the line is they have a new, I forget the technology called, but basically it shuts off the backlight to get super deep blacks on an LCD TV.
Okay.
And it's like 3x better contrast ratio, and it is seriously blacked out. And part of it is just because of the demo video they're using. It's like woman singing with a spotlight on her, and then everything else is like inky black. But it legitimately, there was none of that kind of bluish tint you get from trying to do blacks on most
And when
LCDs.
we're talking about world post Panasonic's plasmas, that's exactly the kind of news we want to hear.
For real. Yeah. So that's very good. But let's talk about, so I heard you talk about this little projector that is $30,000. So I'm going to need you to explain to me why anyone would spend $30,000 on a projector.
Classic Sony. Among the many things they announced during Kaz Hirai's keynote speech, they talked for about 45 minutes about things that Sony has done in the past. They interviewed Vince Gilligan about some stuff. Yeah. And then at the end, they were just like, here's 5 announcements in 5 minutes.
Yeah.
And one of the things they mentioned was this Life UX. I forget the particular name of it, but it's actually several things. They have projectors that can go anywhere. In their demo room, if you get a chance to check it out, they have them in the lamp, like over a kitchen table, projecting down onto it so you can read the paper and do different things like that. They have them coming out of different lights on the ceiling, broadcasting onto the wall. They have a mirror that turns into a touch screen. And the big one is the projector. It's this long projector. It's sort of like this, but it's lower, wider, and longer. It has different segments. It's got 2 open cabinets in the end for you to put, like, you know, your PS4 or whatever in.
Right.
It has speakers integrated into it, and then out of it, sort of like a projector that LG showed off last year, it flips up and shoots back at the wall behind it with a short throw projector, so you can put it practically right up against the wall. And I think they said like a 147-inch screen in 4K that it can project. To get that, will probably cost around $30,000 to $40,000 is what they said.
Which is, I mean, that's nice, 147 inches, but I'm still skeptical of projectors. I mean, like, is it really a legitimate replacement? Like, if you're spending $30,000, I can buy one hell of a TV for $30,000.
Yeah.
Why would I buy that?
Even if you have that kind of money, there are a lot of other things you can do with it. I don't know why you.
Okay.
you would
So
buy
this
it.
is just to design. Look what we can build. Kind of a situation is what it feels like.
Again, classic Sony.
Yeah,
they can do it, so they will.
Yes.
But it was impressive.
Yep.
And if you're talking about a projector that might be able to work in pretty much any house, let's imagine for a moment that it made sense to purchase one.
Yeah.
You don't need to have a blacked out room to watch your projector in, which is, Ben and I talk about this all the time. We should all have projectors, but we don't, because usually the complications.
Right.
You know, you need to have a dark room, or at least that's the perception anyway. You need to have your screen and all that. For this Sony thing, they said, no, you got a wall, you got a 147-inch 4K TV.
I mean, that's an attractive proposition if they would reduce the price.
Yeah, and the one even last year from LG was, I think, around $10,000 when it came out, and I don't think they're talking about it anymore. So I don't know what the market is for that, but it's interesting that these things exist. The other thing that Sony announced was their PlayStation Now streaming service.
Which, again, not many details about it.
Yeah, they were kind of cagey about how this might be priced, but I guess you'll be able to rent access or pay a subscription fee. They didn't say if it would be integrated with PlayStation Plus, but they're going to launch a beta on the PlayStation 3, which is good for owners of the old system.
Absolutely, I like that.
And it seems like they're mostly going to focus on streaming PS3 games. Have you used OnLive ever?
Yes, I have used OnLive. I actually have the OnLive console sitting largely unused.
How did that work?
So, I mean, OnLive, the when you had it on a solid enough connection, it worked really well. You'd get some artifacting here and there. When you, like most things, if you get into one of those, tons of explosions and lots of animations going on, it would bog down a little bit. But the real thing is your bottleneck is your connection. And if you like, I would try to use it on Wi-Fi, and I have a range extender, and that's how I would plug it in because it's supposed to be wired to function properly.
Okay.
But if you didn't have I wasn't going to run a 15-foot cable from my router across the room, so you make do with what you got, and that's why you get a worse user experience. But generally speaking, I mean, I think it works. Like, I don't do a lot of first-person shooters where I'm super concerned about latency. So in that sense, I think it certainly could be a very viable option, like to a point where we eventually have TVs and you don't need a console for. Certainly there's always going to be a market for cutting edge, next gen stuff, and I don't think it can ever take that over. But certainly, it's better than having just Angry Birds. Kind of we're in the Angry Birds universe right now for smart TVs. So this would be a little bit better than that. And I have high hopes for Sony's offering that maybe especially if they can make it work well over Wi-Fi, like relatively bulletproof. I'm definitely on board.
They seem committed to it. They bought Gaikai, and they're making that technology go. They announced it would work on their TVs embedded.
Yep.
And they talked about mobile devices a bit. I think it's probably going to be coming to that new phone they announced.
Yeah.
And
phones,
eventually,
the Vita.
Yeah. It's pretty insane to think that you could be playing a real PS3 game on your phone, assuming that you could control it some way.
Yeah, and I mean, obviously the convenience factor, everything, just being able to reach out and grab any game that you want at any time without having to, deal with the physical media aspect of it, that's thumbs up. I'll just believe it when I see it. Like I said, I've played with Gaikai's service, before they got bought out, and I've played with OnLive, and they always work, but they're never going. I haven't seen it to where it's going to tempt like hardcore gamers. It's more of a casual, which is probably fits my bill more. I would fall into that category. And just because convenience factor, having access to all the games, but it really boils down to, can you deliver a solid feed?
That convenience factor could be the thing, because I opt for Netflix over a Blu-ray far too many times, because I can open up Netflix without getting off the couch.
Exactly.
That's the line.
I mean, that's the key. And I just hope that they can, like, this was something earlier when I was talking to Michael Aragon at Sony about just PlayStation 4 generally and the PlayStation Store, and we all know that maybe Sony didn't always have the best user interface on their console. So part of it though is like Netflix has a fairly good, it provides a good user experience because it's simple and easy to get into. And it's like, so as long as they can make it also keep the convenience factor to the point where you're not having to click through like 4 or 5 times just to get to playing.
Yep.
Because that'll remove the convenience factor that we're talking about if you make it do that to stream. So note to Sony, if you're going to build, make sure that your gaming service makes it easy actually to just hit play and start playing the game.
That is the ideal. What else did I see from the cloud? I saw TiVo, their network DVR prototype.
Yes.
It's very interesting. Ben has switched to TiVo for the DVR. You know Ben. You know that he's rarely happy.
Right.
He is very happy.
Rarely might even be generous.
He's been happy once or twice. I've seen it. I've known him for a long time.
That's good.
He likes the new DVRs that they have. They're taking that experience from the latest TiVo DVRs and putting it in the cloud. They've got a prototype set up, and this is something that cable companies could choose to implement.
Yep.
You can have your regular TV, and you can also have IPTV that streams to any device. They showed it to an iPad. They showed it to a Roku. Just see, oh, hey, that's stored in the cloud. I'm just going to go watch it. They can do dynamic ad insertion, which makes the cable company and broadcasters happy.
Right.
Because they can go ahead and update the ads after the fact.
So this is like a service that they're going to want to license out to all cable providers?
And from talking to them, they wouldn't be doing all of the things, some of the back-end stuff. That's not really what they do. But they bring their UI and the whole setup.
Yeah. which is
and they've been getting this IP control. They've got it built into the latest Romeo DVRs. They had external boxes that did streaming, so I think they've got all the pieces. Someone has to actually pick it up,
right.
which is always the key.
I mean, so my question is, like, this isn't the first cloud DVR service, and it seems to me that makes infinitely more sense than me. I'm already having to pay $10 a month to DirecTV to rent a box that doesn't have enough space for me. So, I mean, is this going to be the way of the future?
Well, they're not going to solve that because you can still pay for more storage, of course.
Right.
Got to get paid, man.
I mean, whatever. I mean, I'll pay monthly to have the DVR service, but just don't make me ever have to worry about. I mean, the problem, the thing is that Google basically has ruined it for everyone as far as I'm concerned. Like, I shouldn't have to pay for that much more storage. I mean, I can store 1 terabyte worth of pictures through Flickr, so I better have at least for free. So why can't I have a terabyte for my DVR?
And especially with many of the cable companies, you got these puny 320 gig or less, 160 gig drives. Where do they even find a drive that size anymore? Who makes that?
They're buying like the leftovers from 5 years ago that Western Digital and Seagate got to get rid of.
Somehow it's what makes it into your DVR. But cloud's potentially unlimited storage, all about it.
Yeah.
I think that's the dream for most people. You've got a practically on-demand access to anything that's aired.
Yeah. I mean, that's what it should be.
On any screen.
Yeah. And everybody wants to be able to watch their TV. I mean, like the convenience factor of being able to watch whatever you got on your tablet, laptop. Like, I want that. I can't imagine many people don't want that.
I live in 2013. If I can watch Netflix everywhere, why can't I watch cable everywhere?
Exactly.
And it's a legitimate question that people are asking, and they have what seems like an answer.
Yeah. So do you think that is going to be kind of like, am I finally going to be able to ditch my hard drive DVR at any point in the future, do you think? Are those going to go by the wayside with cloud? I mean, it seems I would rather do that. I don't need that in my home.
It certainly seems possible.
Yeah, because I mean, the Aereo has a DVR service, right?
Yep.
With theirs.
Yep.
I mean, and
it can be
exists.
done, and I think Cablevision was the case that got the whole cloud DVR issue sort of legally settled so that they can introduce services like this. Comcast has talked about doing it with their X2. It seems viewable, but in this space, especially when you talk about the cable TV companies, when you talk about TiVo, to be quite honest, some of these things take seemingly forever to happen.
Right. Do you trust TiVo to do it right?
Eventually.
Because I don't trust the cable companies to get it right, is what I'm getting at. So I'd rather have TiVo do it, I think.
Eventually, right-ish.
Yeah.
It took them a very long time to move from the standard TiVo experience to the TiVo Premiere that we had a few years ago. And then from that, when they launched the Romeo just recently, they seem to have mostly gotten it right. So that explains a bit about their process.
Okay. I can dig that. So what about, there's also, the virtualized hopper that was also announced as well, right?
Dish talked a lot about their technology. They've got wireless hoppers. They've got a Joey, which is the main DVR. I think that they said can record 8 things at once now.
Yeah, I believe so.
If you want to talk about getting rid of the box, you would still need the main DVR, but they have apps for the PlayStation consoles that are coming out, the PS3 and PS4, and for LG's TVs that will allow you to go ahead and watch TV, no box.
Now that is definitely what I want. I'm all about removing any kind of clutter I have, so I like seeing that.
And especially combined with, for example, LG's new WebOS interface, you could have that very well integrated and never leave it.
Yeah, and then you don't have to deal with anything.
It would be nice to see that integrated into something like the Xbox One. You could have that in a whole other room and still have access to all your live and recorded TV.
Yes.
Assuming that they did that. But I want to hear about it on more devices. I want to hear exactly how well it works in the real world, not just in a planned demo.
Right. That's always the thing.
I know they did a ton of things with their mobile apps. Did you see the Roku TVs?
I haven't. I have not. I read about it. I mean, I have a Roku 3 at home, so I'm familiar with Roku, but not the new TVs.
The Roku, very popular device, very easy to use. They launched last year the Roku streaming stick that will let you plug it in and get the Roku experience basically right through your TV with the TV remote. Right. And now with some smaller TV manufacturers, I think they announced TCL and Hisense will have TVs that just have Roku integrated. That is the TV's operating system. And I spoke to them about it yesterday. The hardware isn't exactly the same as the Roku 2 or the Roku 3. It's kind of a different chip because it has different things it has to do. Yeah. But for example, the demos they were showing, they were still early, but they already had the YouTube app that right now is only on Roku 3 is going to be coming to Roku 2 soon.
So this has been something that I've always kind of thought about was interesting for Roku, and that seems like a very logical step to me because smart TVs are doing their best to pretty much obviate the need for Rokus or anything else of that nature. So, I mean, Roku already has a lot of experience. Why wouldn't they just farm out and license their UI and let them do it? Because it's better than a lot of, I think, smart TVs are doing.
It's one of the best, and certainly easiest to use. It's a mature platform. There are tons of apps. It seems to be pretty easy to build for, and I think we were talking about this. I don't remember if I was talking to you in the trailer. The mobile companies, they hear, or I was talking, I think, to TiVo, and they were talking about how many companies, how many different platforms they want to build for. iOS, sure, Android, and then you move on and you say how many. When you talk about TVs, there are so many different operating systems. And they change every year, and the hardware is different. Yeah. When you have some unification, that's what everyone wants. And if you can develop once for Roku and then it runs in 20 places, especially for a company like TCL or Hisense, who probably isn't that well positioned to develop their own software.
Right. Or if they do develop it, it's probably going to be just
not very good.
Yeah, painful to use.
Haven't heard a lot about Google TV this show.
I've heard nothing about. Well,
I've seen it mentioned. There are some TVs, and they seem to have gone away from the Google TV brand, which we heard about late last year. It's just Android on TV with Google services. And I've seen, especially some of the smaller companies, talk about it, and it's still around. But just at this show, at least, we're not hearing really about what they're doing.
What's funny though is, so I mean, I've talked with Rishi and the Google TV folks quite a bit, and it's funny to me because it seems like WebOS, the way they've implemented it, they've kind of done everything that Google TV was trying to do. Like, obviously, the main difference between them, as far as I can tell, is that Google's kind of discovery features and their recommendation engines, clearly they have a significant advantage given all the information that Google has in their search and those kinds of things. But as far as making, LG is really preaching this as a way to treat all content the same. They want to, when I spoke with them, they said that we don't want the web to be a second-class citizen. We want everything. We want it to look as good whether you're watching a web video, assuming the resolution is up there, as it is when you're watching live TV or when you're watching a Blu-ray or watching content on your consoles. And I, as far as I could tell in the quick demo, I mean they've done that, and that was always what Google was saying. Like, they wanted it to just be video.
Seamless. It's video. Whether it's come from the internet or cable or wherever, it's just video.
Yeah. So I mean, I don't know if that's, I'm not really sure. Other than the recommendation features that Google TV brings, WebOS is looking pretty good to me right now. Like, I would be okay with that showing up a lot of places.
That is a question, whether there is room for that. There's always rumors of Apple coming out with something. There have been rumors that Google will come out with their own TV box. Amazon has rumors.
Right. I mean, so here's the thing. Like, I feel like we hear about Apple TV rumors every year. Let's just go ahead and clear this one out right
Infinitely.
now. I am pretty much going to be eternally skeptical. I don't care if people have pictures and are showing me stuff. I'm going to be like, that's fake. Are you with that? Like, because until I hear Tim Cook walk on stage and say, check out this big screen TV we built, I will never believe it.
Apple's in a weird place. They have definitely worked on things. I've talked to people who know people who have talked to some guy down the street who knows what he's talking about.
Right.
And they are certain that Apple is testing things. And why wouldn't they? There's billions of dollars going in the living room. That's something everyone wants a piece of. That's why everyone is there.
But there's no money to be made in TVs, is there? Apple likes fat margins on hardware. There is no margin on TVs, is there?
How much they sell this laptop and tablet for?
Yeah, but that's like so here's the thing, though. That's like a form factor situation that they can blow people's minds with. A TV is a TV. You're not taking it anywhere.
What kind of TV can they sit there and put next to LGs and Samsungs that you're going to say, okay, I'm going to pay
that is
another
way
couple
better.
of $1,000 extra for this?
Come on. That's why I'm not buying it. That is why I'm not buying it.
You would have to be talking about something where it would be tied to a service with content, and that's something that's nearly impossible to do, as we saw with Intel try, give up. We're going to find out what happens with Sony. You pretty much have to try and combine with the cable providers, which is what Microsoft is doing with the Xbox One, and so far they haven't gotten very far, so what's left?
And they already have TV, Apple TV. Hello, you're already on there. Like, and that's easy. And they don't have to. I mean, that's a old smartphone hardware they jammed in a puck and sell for probably a pretty healthy little profit there.
I'm sure they make tons of money on the third one.
Yeah.
They sell it as basically an accessory for your Apple devices, your iPads, your iPhones. If you have it, you can watch your stuff on TV and you're done. And they don't really have to do anything or worry about what the interface is on the TV or designing something entirely of their own.
Mm-hmm. So quick summation, you're with me, you're skeptical? Apple's
I
not
will
making
always be
TVs?
skeptical of any rumor that they're actually going to do it, because until someone explains to me how they're going to solve these problems, they just can't. It's just not possible.
They're unsolvable.
I think, let's talk about some of the weird things that have happened. Michael Bay.
Yeah, that was real weird. What? And then when he said that it was because he got so excited.
He's so excited about Samsung that he can't talk about Samsung.
He had to get out of there. I'm just geeking out on stage.
I believe it. Anyone who listens to the podcast know I'm a huge Michael Bay fan. Whatever he says, I'm with it. That's what he says went down, that he just loves Samsung's curved TVs too much. That must be what it was. The man who made Transformers 3 would never tell a lie.
See, I always thought that if you're real excited about something, you're going to jump on stage like too early, like stepping on people's toes. I'm not bugging out when I'm super excited about anything.
Well, he wanted to go ahead and add some explosions in post, so he just had to go backstage and figure out the effects.
Got to fix it. Can fix everything in post.
That's what I figure. Anything else? Anything entirely bizarre that you've seen with TVs? I mean, we've seen all the curved TVs. Sony is doing their slightly different shaped things.
So back to the LG thing. I forgot to mention this. This was actually kind of bizarre. So LG is trying to make setting up your TV entertaining. They are trying to delight you during the setup process for your TV. And
possibly the most boring thing in life.
Right. So, I mean, I commend them on the effort. So the way that they are trying to make it enjoyable to set up your TV is they call it Beam Bird, this cartoon bird that they've done with like some very Korean looking style, like cute animation shorts that they do.
Yep.
And it's actually like a cool like little thing bird. I didn't get to go through the whole setup process. They just kind of had stock video rolling showing you screenshots. But the way it works is you have like this bird introduces itself and flies around, and it talks about various things, and then it takes you to just like a setup screen, and you punch in your Wi-Fi password, and then it lets you, another little short comes and says, okay, now you can plug in your Netflix account or whatever, all the different setup processes. And if you try to skip one, it'll, the little bird comes up and is like, oh, are you sure you want to do this kind of a thing? And then it disappears. So, I mean, it's kind of a thing, but really it just makes setting up your TV longer because you're watching these little shorts. And I think they're aware that this could be real annoying, because I heard both of the guys that I talked to that were on the product team that designed this, the whole WebOS platform, they compared it to Clippy.
Yeah,
and they said, we don't want to make it Clippy.
They know that's
so
instantly where your mind goes when you hear about it.
So I'm like, if you're already thinking that people might end up comparing it to Clippy, I was just like, it made me kind of think twice about why are you doing this then? But I'm not the target audience, you know what I mean? Like maybe my mother would think that was just the best thing that ever happened to setting up televisions. But it's interesting. Like I said, I commend them for doing it, whether or not it's just bizarre, really, to be watching little cartoons.
They're trying.
Yeah.
The other interesting thing that I think I've seen so far, I saw Vizio's new TVs.
Oh yeah, I have not seen those. What's good? They just tonight announced some pricing for these Quad HD TVs that they say they're coming out with. Okay.
Vizio, I certainly look forward to seeing them. They've brought out some of the things we've seen at CES. Other things we've seen at CES have never arrived.
Yep.
But they are getting into the 4K business, of course, like everyone else. Apparently, their new TVs aren't going to support 3D, which is interesting. But if they're going to cut costs somewhere, may as well be there.
I'd rather have high res than 3D.
Yeah. If you're sitting there and saying, I'm going to make a choice, and their prices are pretty reasonable. I think their biggest one, like they have a 70 or 80 inch, and I think it's like a 70 inch for like $2,500, something like that. It's something crazy.
Whoa, that is crazy.
But the pricing it's Vizio. It's very reasonable, and these are supposed to arrive towards the later part of the year. But beyond that, to get even crazier, they're going for the really high end. They're working with the new Dolby Vision technology, which is high dynamic range, something that we've seen demonstrated here years ago.
Yeah.
They've been working on this for several years, and they're partnering with several manufacturers to get displays out. They say they're going to have them out this year. They have a 65-inch and a 120-inch display that they showed. And it does look amazing. It does make a standard HDTV next to it look washed out.
Bad, yeah.
It's different. And I've seen the demos before. If it really works in real life the way that the Dolby and now the Vizio and the other manufacturers say,
yeah,
it could take TV to a whole other level, in just with regular LED, not even with going to OLED.
And this was a 4K set too?
Yes.
Okay.
These are of course 4K sets because
Yeah.
everything new has to be 4K.
Right.
And or curved.
Must be the 4K, more 4K.
I think even RCA said they were coming out with 2 curved TVs, and that was about when I said, man, we might have had enough with.
Yeah, it
curved.
may have jumped the shark now.
Okay, RCA, you're going to be selling these where, like?
I don't know. Kmart?
I don't know where their TVs are sold.
Yeah.
But wherever they are, you will be able to get curved TVs potentially.
So I mean, Vizio, are they ever going to like be considered like with these new sets? I mean, is it legitimate consideration between that and say like a Samsung or a Sony set?
Possibly. They're close. And even their lower end sets, even their kind of regular sets, the ones that are out now and coming out in smaller sizes, they're doing full LED backlighting.
Yeah.
Like not edge lighting, real LED array backlighting. And as you step up through the series, you get more zones, which gives you that darkness control that you're talking about with Sony.
Yeah.
And that's impressive at a very reasonable price point. And that's very high quality TV that you're talking about.
And I've liked their recent turn in like industrial design.
Yes.
Their TVs didn't always look so
Yeah.
good, but they've looked a lot better recently.
They clearly have focused on making them look like everything else. They've got their smart TV platform is looking very good. They've got their Vizio CoStar LT. They seem to have gone away from Google TV. They said they didn't have anything to talk about in terms of Google TV. It does, at least right now, it doesn't look like they're going back there. It seems like Yahoo widgets based, basically, but the apps all work very well. And their box seems to have been popular. So Vizio, they're a real option.
Who knew? That's pretty good. So what about Sharp? You went through there as well,
Yes,
right?
I went through Sharp. They have 4K TVs as well.
I'm shocked.
Surprise.
Yeah.
But what's surprising is that in between their new 1080p TVs and in between their 4K TVs, they have what they're calling Q+, Quadron Plus, which is sort of in between 1080p and 4K. It's taking their 1080p TVs, and because they have 4 pixels, they have 4 subpixels. They have the 4 colors because they're Quadron technology. So instead of just red, green, and blue, it's red, green, blue, yellow. And they're going deeper into the control of that so they can control the two sides at once to create more colors with fewer pixels, basically. They say that they can make a sharper picture in most cases. Some things like all red, of course, they can't do much about it.
Yeah.
But in most cases, you're going to be using all of them, that they can have much better precision with just 1080p.
And this
And a
isn't just
TV
marketing speak? Can you tell a difference?
It looked good.
Yeah.
It's a demo.
Yeah.
You never know. But it looked, to my eye, better than 1080p at a glance. Not as good as 4K.
Of course.
But it looked good, and it seems like it's not going to cost much more than the standard 1080p TVs do.
And it's not like this isn't 2K? This is literally just
This is just a 1080p panel.
Okay.
And the interesting part is that they're putting 4K processing into the TV, so when there are 4K sources available, you'll be able to watch it on this TV. So you can basically get future-proofed with a 1080p TV.
That's interesting.
It's an interesting take. I kind of worry if you're a customer and you come in and they say, okay, we got these TVs, we got 1080p, we got 4K, and then we've got 1080p plus that's in between them, and you're just gonna say, you know what, I'm just gonna go home.
Yeah, it just seems like that seems like that would be a perfect way to just have all your 1080p sets do that. Like you said, the future proofing, like that's a very, I don't know if they're worried about how much that would cannibalize their own 4K sets, but like that would seem like a useful feature that I would be interested in, because if you study, like 4K content still far ways away, so if you're buying a TV now, spend a little less, but that way you're covered if and when the 4K revolution ever actually arrives.
It's certainly possible, and I was skeptical at first, but then after I saw it, I started to turn. And I think that's what's going to happen with a lot of people. I hope Sharp can pull it off. It may be that middle ground for a person who's not ready to buy 4K and may not be ready to buy for a few years.
So what's I know you haven't seen all of the sets yet, but what's your choice if you're going at a reasonable price point?
Oh.
Like if you got, And by reasonable, I mean, let's say you've got like, you know, three grand or under.
I'm probably looking at one of those LG WebOS TVs, but I'm a massive WebOS fanboy,
Yeah.
so you know I gotta have that.
Me too. WebOS is a big selling point for me.
That's the thing that has me the most intrigued at a regular price point. I want to thank all of our listeners and watchers for checking out the HD podcast. This has been our friend Michael Gorman. You can follow him on Twitter at Numeson. That's Numeson.
That's right.
Always talking Hokey-related things.
Always. Usually complaining about Hokey-related things, but, you know, if they would do better and get a better offensive coordinator, maybe I wouldn't have so much to complain about.
I'm Richard Lawler. You can follow me on Twitter at RJCC. We'll be back tomorrow with an audio podcast with Ben Drawbaugh. Thanks, and we'll see you later.